My name is Roy Valverde. I grew up in a third world country, Costa Rica. That's in Central America, next to Panama, in the Panama Canal. Growing up in Costa Rica, well, being in third world is full of jungles, still full of jungles. Tropical rainforest. We grew up in the mountains. My family was from the mountains. Actually, my dad, he and his family owned coffee bean plantations and some banana and plantain plantations. So we were pretty far out in the country where they would do all the work and then they export the fruit out to the city. Called San Isidro de El General. That's the name of the place. My parents' relationship, from what I remember and I've been told, Costa Rica, my grandfather, great-grandfather, and my father, they worked really hard during the day and they drank lots of alcohol during the night. It was a little bit of a cultural thing back in those days. Costa Rica was full of machismo, where the man rules and he is allowed to do pretty much anything he wants to, as long as he provides for the family. So my father was a hard-working man, but at the same time, he wasn't very nice to my mother, which led them to eventually get separated and divorced. We pretty much grew up with my mother with a single mom. When my mother had 4 kids, is when my father left us. He would get drunk and disappear for months. They'd show up one day, stay for a couple days, disappear again. A lot of times he didn't send my mother any money, so we lived a very poor life in a 1-bedroom house. If we call it a house, it's just a bedroom with a little faucet in the corner with a community bathroom, and we just take a bath, bed bath pretty much. I remember going to kindergarten. That's how we lived right there in a little tiny little home. We all slept in one bed. It was like a twin bed. You know, mom and 2 kids on top and 2 kids at the bottom, and we alternate. And then we eat on the floor, sitting on the floor. But I remember there was a lot of joy. There was a lot of happiness in the air, but we were really poor. Well, that's the interesting thing about life. When you're a kid, you only know what you know. We didn't have television, we didn't have radio. For a long time, we didn't even have electricity. We just had candlelight. So you go to sleep when the sun goes down. And my mother would say, hey guys, the sun's going down. So we'd all get our beds ready, because we didn't have money for candles either. And then as soon as the sun came up, voila, you got up to go to school or to do other, find breakfast. Lucky for us, we lived in a very jungle area. Well, I call it a jungle, but it's more like tropical rainforest. But you could go out to the forest and find the smell of oranges, mangoes, guava, which is very, very, very aromatic fruit, guayabas. There's a lot of wild fruits that you never see here in America that have a very strong smell. So you'd be going through a jungle and then you get like this sweet smell, and there's a tree nearby because you get the smell of it and you get really excited. And a lot of times we'd go through the forest and we go scavenging, pretty much just scavenging through the forest and find fruits. We grab a few fruits and then we try to remember how to get to that tree. The forest grows really fast, so it becomes really dense really quickly. When we were kids, my brother and I, we were 4, 5, 6 years old, we already had our own machete, or else we'd find a machete in the forest. We're like, hey, new machete for me. And then we just have a machete in our little string or a little type belt on our side, and we throw away our old machete and get a new machete. Not throw it away, we'd give it to one of our friends maybe, and then we found a new machete. Or sometimes we had like 4 machetes because we found extra machetes, and then one of my friends would be like, hey, that's my machete I lost a year ago. I'm like, oh, there you go. And then you go back to your old machete. Some of the biggest fears I had when I was a kid, we were not afraid of the dark, and sometimes we would get caught in the dark, in the jungle, but we were afraid of this creature that lived in the darkness called La Llorona. She's this mythical ghost creature that if you're caught in the jungle near a river during the night, she'll come over and steal you and then drown you in the river. I think the myth came about because some of the kids had drowned in the river, but it was La Llorona's fault. But so now looking back as a grown-up, I'm thinking maybe it was never the Llorona. It's just you're in the jungle and crossing a river in the dark is just not the smartest thing to do. But one of my biggest fears was the mythical La Llorona. I was never afraid of being hungry. I always had the confidence or reassurance the next day, even though we went to bed hungry multiple times, I always knew the next day we could get up and find the local mango tree and find some mangoes, even if they were green, or other fruits. Even if they were green, you could still eat green fruits like green mangoes and other types of fruits. No, I didn't really have fears other than the mythical La Llorona. How many brothers and sisters I had in Costa Rica? 2 sisters and an older brother. There were 4 of us kids. We played soccer. Everyone in Costa Rica plays soccer. We didn't have a soccer ball, or even a plastic soccer ball. So what us kids would do, we'd get a plastic bag, we fill it with leaves or newspaper, and then we just make a knot on it, and then we put it inside another plastic bag and we make a knot on it, and that was our soccer ball. And then when the one bag would wear off, we just throw it away and then save it for another day, and then we keep playing with soccer. What would people be different miss out on? I wouldn't think anyone misses out on anything. I think when you're a kid, I think your world is just what you have around you. Unless, of course, you're exposed to television or media, then that expands your world and you think, why don't I have that? Why don't I have that? But where I grew up in Costa Rica, the world I had was perfect. I didn't think I was missing anything. I really don't know. It didn't affect me, so I can't relate to it. No, actually, I did go to kindergarten. In fact, Costa Rica has one of the highest literacy rates of all Central and South America, because everyone can go to school. The government will give you clothing, shoes, books, pencils, everything. So we were able to go. We'd walk, interesting enough, we would walk to school about 3 miles. But we weren't dealing with a bunch of other kids in the morning. As soon as the sun came up, you see, everybody would just walk to school and no one ever complained. It gets really rainy. In the rainy, we just get plastic bags, or sometimes we just share cardboard boxes on top of each other. We didn't have umbrellas like we do, but everybody just walked to school. We'd show up to school all wet. We sat on our tables and our chairs all wet, and then eventually we dried because it would warm up or your clothes were dry by the time you went home. I did not. No, I was always very respected my teachers. We had some very wonderful teachers. In fact, I have a story about a teacher. Our school had Catholic nuns who were our teachers, because they didn't have enough teachers, so the nuns would come over and teach math, English, music, everything. We had this really nice younger nun. I don't remember her name, but every morning we'd say a prayer like, thank you for breakfast and thank you for mom and dad. So often I'd go to school, but we haven't had breakfast. So a couple of times it was me and another young lady, her name was Amalia. And when she say, now say thank you for breakfast. And so I raised my hand and say, I didn't have breakfast. So do I have to say thank you for breakfast? And she's like, you didn't have breakfast? I'm like, no. And then Amalia raised her hand. She's like, I didn't have breakfast either. So the nun said, come, you two come to the front. And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. But no, Catholic nun, she gave Amalia and I, she gave us all each a little coin, which was like 50 cents. And then we said, go down to the local store. The store is not a real store. It was just a house that had a window. And in the window, and there you can buy things. So I said, go buy yourself something. So Amalia and I walked down to this house or store, and we bought ourselves some cookies. And I remember we bought between our coins combined, we can buy a Coca-Cola. So we combined our money, we bought 2 cookies and a Coca-Cola. And then the lady in Costa Rica, they don't give you the Coca-Cola. They put it in little plastic bags, so you drink out of a plastic bag. And then you just make a knot on it, and you just make a hole in it, and you drink it that way. So that day we had Coca-Cola and cookies for breakfast. So our school, we had wonderful nuns, Catholic nuns, who were just angels on earth. So I have 2 sets of parents. The first, my biological parents in Costa Rica. My dad, despite the fact that he was alcoholic, and he was a very hard worker, so he always taught me when I was a kid that if you're not afraid of work, you'll get ahead in life. And I like that. And I didn't mind. Sometimes I would go with him and with our machete, and we'd cut grass, and he'd get money for it, and he'd give me a couple of coins. And my mother in Costa Rica also, she was a nurse in Costa Rica. Not like a nurse who went to school, but she learned to be a nurse in the hospital just by working at a hospital. And from her, I also learned compassion for others and helping other people feel better, and always looking for the opportunity to help them in whatever their circumstance was. So I learned that from my biological parents. Now, when I was 10 years old, we had a battery-operated radio, and every morning at 6 a.m., my mother would turn it on, and we'd listen to the Ave Maria song. It's a Catholic song. And every night at 6 o'clock, my mother would turn it on, we listened to the Ave Maria, and we listened to the news of the country. So one day when I was listening to the Ave Maria, and then the news, in the news there was an announcement that says, American family is looking for children to adopt. Anyone interested, please call this number. So I heard it the first time at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that night I had a pencil with me. After the Ave Maria, I listened to the news, and when the commercial came on again, I wrote down the phone number, and I asked my mother, my biological mother, can I be adopted? There's this great opportunity to go to America and be adopted by this family. And my mother said, why do you want to be adopted? I said, well, I could play in the snow, I can explore the mountains, I can travel. It's my opportunity. And so my mother gave me a coin. And I told my brother Paul, I said, Paul, come with me, I'm gonna make a phone call. So we walked about half a mile to the main road. There was a phone, payphone, and a light. And I called the number, and the lady answered. And I said, hi, my name is Roy. I'm here with my brother. My mother said we could be adopted. And she said, yeah, what? You know, she was surprised, and she said, she's there with you? She's like, no, my mother's back up home. And she says we could be adopted. She spoke Spanish, of course. And then the lady couldn't really quite understand what I was saying because I think I was too excited. So my brother's like, here, let me talk. So my brother took the phone and like, hi, my name is Paul. Yes, we understand there's an opportunity to be adopted. And the lady's like, yeah. And she explained to him kind of what was going on. Next thing we know, she says, I'll be there tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So we're like, okay, we'll wait here. You can't find our house because we don't have a real address. But if you come on this main road, when you see a payphone, we'll wave at you. You just, you know, slow down. And so sure enough, the next day, this lady named Mercedes came in a red car and she drove up to the phone and we're like, hi, I'm Paul, I'm Roy, and like, we have to leave your car here because down where we lived, there was no paved road or a road. You had to like walk down the trail. And so she came down with us and she talked to our mother and she said, hey, I understand you okay with them being adopted? And my mother said, yes. And she said, why? And my mother says, I think they'll have a better future in America than they do here with me. After school, I don't think I can provide for anything for them. So sure enough, this lady Mercedes coordinated with this American family, Brent and Eva Williams, and they adopted my brother and I, and we came to America. And that's, we call them Mami Eva and Papi Brent. They are my parents from Lehigh. And they've taught me, well, they raised me from the time I was 11 years old. I called when I was 10 years old. We arrived when I was 11. And then, yeah, my dad in Lehigh has been always a great example. So has my mother. My mother, Eva, is from Sweden. My dad, Brent, he's American. But they're the ones who've pretty much raised me in the gospel. They encouraged me to go on a mission. They taught me to live the word of wisdom and pay tithing, go to church every Sunday, be a good home teacher. They're the ones who give me a lot of like the gospel training. How would I describe my childhood? I would describe my childhood as exciting, full of adventure, and extremely joyous. It was the best of times. Despite the poverty, despite the craziness, I feel that Heavenly Father has blessed me since I was a kid. One thing about my childhood that I like to say is that when I chose to make the phone call to go on a great adventure and come to America, a lot of my neighborhood friends discouraged me. A lot of my mom's side of the family, my aunt and uncles, also discouraged it. They thought it was scary, dangerous. I could be slaved. And despite all their criticism, I chose to believe in what I felt in my heart, and I proceeded, and I'm glad I did. Because I feel that in life, those decisions you make in one moment, that if you trust in God and you don't let the world confuse you, you can achieve great things.